Have you ever felt stuck when trying to speak English, even though you understand it perfectly in your head? Do you ever wonder why you can read and write in English, but your mouth just freezes when it's time to talk? Let me take you into my real story and show you how I broke that wall step by step. Hello, my name is Scarlett, and today I want to tell you about something really personal. How I became fluent in English. It wasn't always easy. In fact, there were moments when I wanted to give up completely, but I didn't. I found a way to push through the fear, the mistakes, and the awkward silences, and I made it. Now I want to walk you through the exact steps that helped me go from struggling to speak, to holding real conversations with Americans around me with confidence. I used to think that if I didn't speak English perfectly, I shouldn't speak it at all. That was the mindset I carried with me for years. I was scared that if I made a mistake, people would laugh at me or think I wasn't smart enough. I believed I needed to speak with perfect grammar, advanced vocabulary, and sound exactly like a native speaker before I could even open my mouth. So what happened? I stayed quiet. I knew a lot of English in my head. I could write it. I could read books. I even understood movies without subtitles. But when it came time to actually talk, nothing came out. My mouth froze. My thoughts raced. And worst of all, I felt ashamed. I avoided speaking in meetings. I avoided small talk at the grocery store. Even when someone said hi in passing, I'd just smile and walk away. Inside, I felt stuck, like I had this whole version of me trying to get out, but the fear of not being perfect kept locking me in. The pressure to speak flawlessly was everywhere. Social media was filled with native-like English speakers with polished accents and advanced words. I used to watch videos and compare myself to them. I thought, I'll never sound like that. I even signed up for online grammar classes, thinking that maybe if I fixed all my mistakes, I'd finally feel ready to talk. But the more I focused on the rules, the less I actually practiced speaking. It was like trying to swim by reading about water instead of jumping into the pool. I became really good at judging myself and really bad at expressing myself. Looking back now, it's almost ironic. I had built a wall with my own expectations, and I was too afraid to break it. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened that changed everything. I was in the break room at my job in Dallas, pouring coffee, when I overheard two coworkers talking about their weekend plans. They weren't using big words. They weren't speaking like textbooks. They were just talking. One of them made a grammar mistake, and the other didn't even care. They just kept laughing and chatting like it didn't matter. That moment hit me hard. It was like a door cracked open in my mind. I thought, wait a second, they're not perfect, but they're connecting. They're being understood. That's what I've been missing. That day I realized the goal wasn't to be perfect. The goal was to be real, to connect, to be understood. So I made a decision, one that felt scary but freeing. I gave myself permission to speak imperfect English. I promised myself that I wouldn't hold back anymore just because I didn't know the right word. I told myself that communication was more important than correctness, that people care more about your intention than your accent, that even if I made a mistake, it was better than staying silent. I'll never forget the first time I tested this new mindset. I was at a neighbor's backyard barbecue. I stood there holding a plate, nervously scanning the crowd, thinking, just say something. My heart was racing. I took a breath and said to the lady next to me, "This food is so tasty." It wasn't a big sentence. It wasn't fancy. But she smiled back and said, "Right? My husband grilled the ribs." And just like that, we had a conversation. That little moment gave me a spark of confidence. I started pushing myself more. I joined in on small conversations at work, even if I could only say a few sentences. I stopped obsessing over grammar in the middle of a sentence. If I forgot a word, I described it another way. If I made a mistake, I laughed it off and kept going. And you know what? People didn't judge me. They didn't walk away. In fact, they leaned in. Because I was being honest. And honesty connects people. I wasn't performing. I was participating. That's when I really started to grow. I noticed that when I relaxed, my sentences flowed better. My mind wasn't stuck in translation mode. I started thinking in English, even when I was alone. I began to realize that fluency isn't just about having the right words. It's about having the courage to speak, even when you're unsure. I also learned to celebrate small wins. Like the time I ordered coffee and the barista understood me the first time. Or when I made a joke in English and someone laughed. Or when a coworker asked me to help her understand a new policy because she trusted me to explain it clearly. These moments felt like gold. They weren't perfect, but they were progress. And I held on to each of them like stepping stones, building a path toward the confident speaker I wanted to become. I no longer needed to be perfect. I just needed to keep walking forward. Another thing that helped me let go of perfection was shifting how I saw mistakes. I used to see them as proof that I didn't belong, but now I see them as proof that I'm trying. Every mistake I made was a sign that I was practicing, learning, and putting myself out there. And over time, I started to notice a pattern. The more mistakes I made, the faster I improved. I'd say something wrong, someone would correct me, and I'd remember it better the next time. In a way, making mistakes became part of the process, a teacher I couldn't avoid, but one I grew to respect. This mindset shift also helped me in conversations with native speakers. I stopped trying to impress them. I started focusing on building connection instead of perfection. When I didn't understand something, I didn't pretend. I asked questions. I used phrases like, "Can you say that again?" Or, "What does that to mean?" And to my surprise, most people were happy to explain. They didn't look down on me. They appreciated that I was making the effort. Some even told me they admired how brave I was for learning a new language and using it every day. That encouragement meant more than they probably knew. It fueled me to keep going. But the truth is, the road wasn't always smooth. There were still moments of self-doubt. Times I'd mispronounce something and feel embarrassed, or freeze in a conversation and wish I could disappear. But now, instead of letting those moments shut me down, I use them to remind myself, this is part of the process. No one becomes fluent overnight, and no one speaks perfectly all the time. not even native speakers. Once I truly believed that, I felt lighter, freer, and more open to making real progress. That openness also led me to start practicing in new ways that didn't depend on other people. I realized that if I wanted to get comfortable speaking, I couldn't wait for perfect situations or perfect conversation partners. I had to create my own space to talk, even if I was the only one listening. That's when I started doing something that felt a little awkward at first, but turned out to be one of the most powerful habits I ever developed. I started talking out loud to myself. Whether I was folding laundry, cooking dinner, or getting ready for bed, I'd talk to myself in English. I'd say things like, "Okay, now I'm going to chop the onions," or "I need to charge my phone before bed." I turned my daily routine into a speaking practice. I'd describe my actions, ask myself questions, even pretend I was hosting a talk show. It wasn't about sounding good. It was about getting comfortable. And slowly, that comfort started to show in real conversations. And that's exactly what leads me to the next part of my journey. Because once I stopped chasing perfection and started speaking from the heart, I realized something important. I didn't need an audience to get better. I could practice speaking even when I was completely alone. That became my next breakthrough moment. After I gave myself permission to stop chasing perfection, I felt like I had taken my first breath of fresh air in years. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I just wanted to be understood. But even though I had started speaking more at work and around neighbors, I quickly realized something. I still wasn't practicing enough. I wasn't talking as much as I needed to be. I mean, most of my day was still quiet. I'd go to work, smile at people, maybe have a short chat with a coworker, then go home and barely say another word in English for the rest of the day. It wasn't enough. Not if I truly wanted to be fluent. That's when I decided I had to stop waiting for opportunities to talk and start creating them myself. At first, I wasn't sure how. I didn't have an English-speaking roommate. I wasn't in school anymore, and honestly, I didn't have many close friends who I felt comfortable speaking with in English without feeling judged. So one night, while I was brushing my teeth, I looked at myself in the mirror and said out loud, "Scarlett, you have to talk, even if you're the only one listening." It sounded a little silly at first, but that moment became a turning point for me. I started talking to myself out loud every single day. I didn't wait for someone to start a conversation. I became my own conversation partner. I began with the basics. I'd describe what I was doing around the house. "I'm making coffee. I need to take the trash out. I think I'll wear my blue sweater today." It was simple language, sure, but that's where fluency starts. It doesn't begin with complicated grammar or fancy words. It starts with being able to talk about your life, the real, everyday stuff. That's the kind of English we use the most, and that's what I needed to get comfortable with. So I made it a habit. Every morning when I got ready, I'd narrate my routine out loud in English. "Okay, I need to shower first. Then I'll get dressed. Should I wear my black flats or my sneakers? Maybe sneakers. It's going to be a long day." I talked to myself in the kitchen, the car, the grocery store parking lot, everywhere. Sometimes it was quiet mumbling. Other times I'd speak full sentences, just like I was talking to a friend. And the more I did it, the more natural it felt. I also started recording myself on my phone. I'd open the voice memo app, hit record, and talk for a minute or two. At first, I didn't know what to say, so I just described my day. Today was pretty busy. I had a lot of meetings. I forgot to eat lunch, but I had a big dinner. It wasn't about making a perfect speech. It was about getting the words out of my head and into the air. That act alone was powerful. It helped me hear how I sounded. It helped me catch patterns in my speech, words I repeated too much, or phrases I didn't know how to finish. And it helped me gain confidence, because with every recording, I could hear myself improving. Listening back to my own voice was uncomfortable at first. I cringed at my pronunciation, my pauses, the moments I stumbled. But after a while, I started noticing growth. My sentences flowed better. I paused less. My vocabulary widened. Not because I studied lists, but because I kept needing new ways to express my thoughts. That's the beauty of speaking out loud. You start realizing which words are missing from your tool belt, and then you go find them. Another practice I added was pretending I was explaining something to someone else. I'd stand in the kitchen and pretend I was on a cooking show. First, we preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Then we chop the vegetables. I even played tour guide around my apartment. On your left, we have the living room. It's small but cozy. It might sound silly, but these games helped me get more creative and spontaneous with my English. I wasn't memorizing scripts. I was training my brain to build sentences in real time, just like I'd have to do in a real conversation. There were days when I didn't feel like talking, days when I was tired or frustrated or doubting myself again. But I made a promise to stay consistent. Even 5 minutes a day was enough. I reminded myself that fluency isn't something you achieve. It's something you build one brick at a time. And every word I said out loud was a brick. So I kept going, and the results started to show. I remember one day at the grocery store, just a regular Sunday, I was standing in the cereal aisle when a woman next to me said, "Do you know if they moved the almond milk?" Without thinking, I answered, "I think it's in the fridge section near the orange juice." It wasn't anything special, but the words came out automatically. No translating in my head, no second guessing. That small moment felt like a huge win. It showed me that all that talking to myself was paying off. Another day, I was driving to work and the traffic was awful. Normally, I'd just sit in silence, but instead, I used that time to practice. I pretended I was talking to a friend about my morning. I woke up late. My coffee machine didn't work. And now there's traffic on 35 again. I even made up both sides of the conversation, like I was on a call. Me. Can you believe it? Imaginary friend. That's rough. Mondays are the worst. Me. Seriously, I need a vacation. It made the drive go faster, and it helped me get used to thinking and speaking in English, even in random, unplanned situations. One of the best parts about practicing alone was that there was no pressure. No one to judge me, no one to correct me mid-sentence. I could take my time, I could repeat things, I could be playful, I could make mistakes and laugh them off. And that freedom gave me the space to experiment, to try new expressions, and to really own my voice. I didn't have to worry about being embarrassed. I could just be myself. Eventually, I added more tools to support my solo speaking practice. I started watching short American vlogs on YouTube and repeating phrases out loud. I'd pause the video and mimic the speaker's tone and rhythm. It helped me work on my pronunciation and learn common expressions. I also used sticky notes around my apartment, on the fridge, mirror, and light switches, with little prompts like, describe your morning in 3 sentences. Talk about your favorite movie. Say what you're grateful for today. Every time I saw one, I'd stop and answer it out loud. These quick moments kept me connected to the habit, even on busy days. Eventually, speaking English became a normal part of my day. Not something I had to force, but something that just happened naturally. I started noticing that my thoughts would form in English, even when I wasn't trying. I stopped translating everything from my native language. My brain began to think in English first. That was a huge shift. Because when you think in English, speaking becomes so much easier. It's like removing an extra step in your brain. There's no more converting, just expressing. And it all started with me talking out loud to myself. In my room, in my car, in the kitchen. When no one was around, I created a safe place to grow. That quiet time, those private moments, became the foundation for every conversation I'd have in public later. People often ask me now, how did you get so fluent? They expect some magic trick. But honestly, I just practiced. Even when no one was there to listen, I practiced until the awkwardness faded. I practiced until I trusted my own voice. I practiced until speaking felt natural, even when I didn't have the perfect words. But the real transformation happened when I took all that solo practice and started using it with real people. Because no matter how much you talk to yourself, there comes a time when you need to take that confidence and share it with others. You need to show up, speak up, and let your English voice be heard in the world. That's what led me to the next part of my journey, the part where I stepped out into my own community and found my voice in ways I never expected. After weeks of talking to myself out loud, whether I was brushing my teeth, driving to work, or cooking dinner, I started to notice something amazing. English didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt like a part of me. I wasn't just learning English anymore. I was living it. My brain had shifted. I wasn't translating word by word like before. I wasn't overthinking every sentence. I was finally starting to think in English, and that made everything flow more naturally. But I knew I couldn't stop there. Practicing alone gave me confidence, but I was still in a safe zone. There were no surprises, no messy conversations, no real back and forth. If I wanted to become truly fluent, I had to step out of my private space and into the real world. I needed to surround myself with real English voices, people who spoke the way Americans actually speak, with all their slang, rhythm, and everyday expressions. The truth is, I didn't grow up in a home where English was spoken. It wasn't on the TV much. It wasn't the language we used at the dinner table or on the phone. So for me, being fluent in English wasn't just about speaking. It was about being exposed to how English sounds in real life. Not textbook English, not formal classroom talk, but the kind of English you hear at the bus stop, in a diner, or when someone's telling a joke. That's what I needed, to soak up the language the way it's actually used by real people, not just in theory, but in motion. So I began with a small but powerful shift. I changed the sounds around me. I turned my phone settings to English, switched my GPS voice to American English, and started listening to English podcasts every time I drove to work. I chose ones where people spoke casually, storytelling podcasts, interview shows, even comedy talk shows. At first, I didn't understand every word. Some hosts spoke really fast, used cultural references I didn't get, or mixed in slang I'd never heard before. But I kept listening. I didn't pause or translate. I just let the words wash over me. Slowly, things started clicking. I recognized patterns, tone, humor, and expressions. I wasn't studying, I was absorbing. My ears were finally tuning in to the music of the language. Then I made a bigger move. I started watching American shows, but this time without subtitles. That was a challenge. In the beginning, I missed a lot, but I picked shows with simple dialogue. Sitcoms like Friends, The Office, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine. These shows were full of everyday talk. No big vocabulary, just people talking like people. And I started repeating lines out loud, mimicking the tone, pace, and emotions. When someone said, "No way," or "You've got to be kidding me," I'd pause the episode and say it out loud myself, again and again, until it felt like mine. I'd say it in the mirror, I'd say it while doing the dishes, and eventually I'd start using those same phrases in my real conversations. But it wasn't enough to just watch and listen. I needed to interact with real people. That's when I decided to join a book club at my local library. It was scary at first. The group was filled with native English speakers, and I was terrified of saying something wrong. But I went anyway. I showed up with my copy of the book, a heart full of nerves, and a goal. Just speak once. That first meeting, I barely said 5 words. My hands were shaking under the table. But one of the members smiled at me and said, "Hey, I liked what you wrote in the margins. You should share that next time." That little encouragement kept me coming back. With every meeting, I opened up more. I started sharing my thoughts about the characters, asking questions, and even cracking a joke or two. Nobody cared if my grammar was perfect. They cared that I was part of the conversation. That book club became a turning point. It showed me that being in a real English-speaking environment was the fastest way to grow. Every discussion, every expression, every laugh was like a mini class, but way more fun and natural than anything I'd learned in school. Encouraged by that progress, I pushed myself further. I looked for more spaces where people spoke English. I started volunteering at a local food pantry twice a week. I didn't do it just for practice. I genuinely wanted to help. But being around native speakers, listening to how they gave instructions, how they greeted people, how they joked while sorting boxes, it was all part of my learning. I asked questions. I joined in on conversations during coffee breaks. I learned to say things like, "Do you need help carrying that?" Or, "We're short on canned beans again." These were the phrases that didn't appear in textbooks but were so real and so useful. Being surrounded by English voices also meant learning the rhythm of American conversation, when to speak up, when to pause, how to react, how to keep things flowing. I learned that people in the US often speak in a relaxed, friendly way, using lots of contractions and idioms. "No worries, I'm all set, it's up to you." These little phrases made me feel more connected, more fluent. I wasn't just using English to communicate, I was starting to understand the culture behind the words. And it wasn't just about talking, it was about listening, really listening. I learned so much just by paying attention. I'd watch how people greeted each other, how they reacted to jokes, how they changed their tone when they were excited or frustrated. I noticed how people in different states use slightly different expressions. I had a friend from Georgia who said "y'all" all the time, and another from New York who talked faster than anyone I'd ever met. Being around these voices helped me adjust my ear and my speaking style to fit into the rhythm of American life. But some of the most powerful moments came from random, everyday interactions, like chatting with the cashier at Target, ordering food at a local taco truck, saying hi to the woman walking her dog across the street. These small conversations didn't feel like practice. They felt like living. And that's when I realized something big. Fluency isn't just about speaking English well. It's about living in the language, making it part of your world, not just your studies. I also found online communities to connect with more people. I joined Facebook groups and Reddit threads where people talked about things I cared about: books, recipes, gardening. I left comments, I replied to others, and even though I wasn't speaking out loud in those moments, I was part of conversations in real English with real Americans. It made me feel like I belonged. Like I wasn't just learning English, I was part of the English-speaking world. Eventually, I reached a point where English stopped feeling like a subject and started feeling like my second home. I could follow conversations on the subway. I could laugh at a joke in a TV show without rewinding. I could talk to a stranger at a community event without rehearsing lines in my head first. And it wasn't because I knew every word or every grammar rule. It was because I had immersed myself in real English voices until they became part of my daily life. Looking back, I'm proud of how far I've come, but I also know the real reason I improved wasn't just luck or talent. It was because I made a decision to put myself in situations where I could grow, even if it was uncomfortable. I stopped waiting for perfect grammar and started chasing real connection. I surrounded myself with English. On my phone, on my TV, in my community, and in my heart. And that decision changed everything. Now, I want to leave you with something important. If you're trying to become fluent, remember this: you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep showing up again and again until the language becomes yours. Surround yourself with real English voices. Listen, speak, engage, and slowly but surely, you'll find your fluency growing. not in some distant future, but right here in your everyday life.